And in a nutshell, what you've got to give to Kirsty is you've got to give her something that, or to General Post, is you've got to be able to give them something that they understand. You've got to have made your idea very clear. You've got to be able to put down on paper, this is what we're going to do, and this makes real sense, and this is why it's going to work really well. So what we'll do is I'm going to show you what my big idea was, and then we're going to have a look at my pitch, and we can pull it apart. Okay, we can say why it doesn't work, and what maybe what I should do to improve it. My big idea was called Rehab the Musical. Is that a good big idea? Do you get it? Hey? Have you got a clear picture of what that is? There's a couple of you guys say yeah. What do you have a clear picture? What's Rehab the Musical about? Hey? You don't know? No idea. Okay, so my big idea was this. I wanted to put, and this was before Glee came out, because when I started this, I wanted to create a musical. So we take South African characters, and we set it to music, and we put it inside a rehab. So a situation where you've got a bunch of people from alcoholics, addicts, all kinds of different people, and we're going to stuff them together, and over a series arc, they're going to have this dramatic action play out, and they're going to be singing to us, right? So that's the start of the big idea, right? So the first thing that I started to do in terms of making this big idea happen, all right, so the first thing to do is to try and make sense of making visual this big idea in our head. Now the biggest thing, I tell you, this is something that Carl Fisher, we pitched, I mean, I've pitched a lot of stuff. And when we pitch to things like Mnet or ETV, the first thing you do is you want clarity, okay? That is above all else, you just want clarity. When you hold up, you don't want to say to someone, I mean this, or I was thinking about this. When I go, Rehab the Musical, are you getting it now? You getting it? Now you're saying yes. Why are you getting it now? You can see it. Okay, so this is one of the things that I think is the most important thing about any treatment that you're ever going to write. Now, you guys are only doing 3 minutes, and I'm supposed, what I'm talking about here is a series arc for an entire series, so there are obviously differences in it. But one of the most important things is, as Carl Fisher said to me, he said, what you want to do is you don't want to argue on paper about what something is about, okay? You want to have pitched and presented something to us, which is the broadcaster, whoever you're pitching to, and they go, oh, I get it, I see it. They might not like it, they might want to disagree with it, but we don't have an argument about, no, I was thinking about this when I put it down, okay? Now, in terms of doing that in any treatment, what I find the most powerful means is what I'm seeing, okay? Because when you write down, oh, I'm doing a country and western this, or whatever it is that your big idea is, the most important thing is not to have a debate about what you're doing, okay? Because when you put something down in terms of, I've got this is the content, these are the characters, it's clarity above all else. So the first thing that I think that is most important as treatment is the choice of the visuals that you're going to be using. Now, this was the first draft of the pitch that I handed in, okay? This one. We actually did a photo shoot specifically for this. The first job that you have to do is, I mean, I can see you know what you're talking about. Yeah. He's got a clear idea of what it is, right? So each of you, in terms of when you're doing this, you're going to have, oh, this is, and it's a cool idea. And you also, you speak with passion. You're going like, okay, I mean, he's got an idea of what he wants to do. Now, how do I make that clear? I mean, the very first thing is, I want the references, the visual references that you've got to make sense to all of these people, because these are the people you have to sell to. When you're pitching a treatment, okay, when I go to Mnet or when I go to ETV, there's a different bunch of people I pitch to each time, okay? And part of my job in terms of when I pitch is knowing who I'm pitching to and understanding what they want, okay? So my first thing is you pitching this idea to me, I go, yeah, you're clever, you've got this stuff, you've got something going there. How are you going to make that work? Now, I'm going to give you the job only on one thing, based on the trust that I believe you're going to produce what you've just said, okay? Now, he's said quite a bit of stuff there, all right? So my trust, based on what you're saying, is now going to be based on the document that you put across to me. Now, the first thing, and I also want another thing to say to this, and just in terms of documents, what I'm going to show you is I made a promo video, okay, which I'll show you now for Rehab. Because, again, I didn't want to debate. Even when I got like the document down, I wanted to go, and that's what it's going to look like. because now there's no argument. Okay, they might not like it, they might bomb it then and there, but if they do like it, and if I have got it right, then we're talking the same language and everyone knows what's going to get produced. Okay, so the most important thing in any treatment, in anything that you're going to hand in, hand over, is clarity, okay, so that you stop all debate about what you, in fact, if you deliver something to me, you shouldn't be able to go, by the way, I didn't really want that second picture in the thing, or it shouldn't be that color, whatever. No excuses. Once you're delivering it in, it's done, okay? It is what is going to be accepted or not. You can't excuse it, you can't explain it, it is what it is. Now, just going back to rehab for a moment, this is the first one that we gave in, okay? And actually it's wrong. I'll tell you why it's wrong. It's wrong because of the white. Rehab the musical, when I first had this big idea, was quite a dark, it was funny, you know, but it had a darkness and an edge to it. And that doesn't have it. Does that read as dark to you? Hey? No. It reads as quite light, quite comic. So comedy was there, and I wanted comedy. I mean, here we go. I'm hanging someone over this place. I mean, you can see this guy's lost his leg. This woman looks like she's insane. So we'd gone for a particular kind of, like, we'd assembled characters that I then put forward to you, and I say, this is the visual. But actually, in truth, I got this wrong, okay, this first round, because what I really wanted was something that was a little more edgy, okay? So, on round 2, I think this comes next, that was what we did. I handed in. Oh, it's more cool now, hey? It's cooler. No, oh, it's dark, it's cool. Okay. So, now the problem with this, but you see now how, in terms of the visual, now we're not arguing anymore, you're getting pictures, okay? You go, oh yeah, I know what he wants. But the previous is the same pitch, okay? This is just what we did round 2. Now, the reason why we did a round 2, and I'm going to show you the promo, we'll jump to the promo video just now, is because, listen, anyone who's making films will tell you as well, you have a very clear idea of what you want. What it ends up with does change, okay? It ends up better if you really know what you're doing. It ends up worse if you don't, okay? And part of if it ends up in a good space is how well thought through all the steps are, okay? So when I did that first pitch, when we were starting to put it together, for me, I obviously hadn't been clear enough in my own head as to where we were going. All right. Okay, so that's second. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump between the 2 pitches. You're going to see the old one and the new one, okay? So where we went. When you pitch something, people are going to, in fact, generally they don't even read most of it. They skim through stuff and they go, oh yeah, I get it. They look at the pictures if you've got them, and they either, if they're interested, then they go through it and they read it in more detail. In terms of what we did here, I first gave them an overview of the series arc, the idea of how we were going to go, the concept around it, the story outline. And in terms of a big series, I know you guys are only doing 3 minutes, but in terms of the big series that we were doing over here, we had to give a 13-part arc, as well as breakdowns along what would happen in particulars. A character Bible, treatment and style, a sample script, which you guys haven't got yet, then key personnel, budget, production. I don't think you guys have to do any of that kind of stuff. But these are the things that are generally accepted that you have to have done. Just out of interest for you, when you do this kind of pitch, a treatment like this, I would say it took us, it would probably take about 200 hours of work, okay? And it's an enormous endeavor, an expensive, enormous endeavor. And if you've done it well, you'll know the inside out. One of the things, the best things, if you ever want to test how well you want to know it, because I know you guys are all nervous and you don't want to say, this is my big idea, but give it to a friend of yours and ask them to say, and ask questions about it. Because if you can't come back and go, oh yeah, I know this, like you obviously know your stuff. If you can't go back and when you're asked about your treatment, if you don't know an area, if there's a blind spot, it's a sinking ship, okay? You need to know every single part of your treatment. You need to know why your characters, why you chose it, how you think that was going to play out. One of the things, as you can see, for those of you who know anything about rehab as well, part of the format of how we pitched this was in steps. So if those of you who know the 12-step or fellowships or Narcotics Anonymous, we use actually the steps in the outline of how we're actually putting your script forward. That's just, you know what I mean? Well, those kind of things are just nice additional things to say, I've thought through my concept a little bit more than the average person, and it's also the kind of stuff that people remember. You should always give a title page just saying what you're making. Even in this instance, you're making a 3-minuter, this is what you're planning on shooting on, this is what it's going to look like. These are the major kind of people involved. The concept was this. So I had this great idea. Rehab the musical. So you're going to have people singing these songs in a rehab. I thought that was inspired, it was genius. Others might disagree. The character arc, the story that I was going to tell, so again, this is obviously on a much bigger series in terms of what you're pitching, but we had to obviously break down how this was going to work. The character arc went like this. There was a young girl, Pia, she's sitting over here, she's played by Nina Milner. She was a young Lindsay Lohan kind of superstar, so a Charlize, a South African Charlize, but she makes it young, like 16, 17 years old. She's a singer. She hits the big time LA, what, and she goes completely off the rails. Drugs, sex, and rock and roll, okay? She has some kind of, run-in with the law, and this is the second run-in that she has. This is her backstory. And after her second run-in, she has two choices. She's going to jail or she's going to rehab, okay? Our story is going to pick up once she's OD'd and she's being rushed into hospital, and the nurses are going to accept her and what have you. And in the story arc, what's going to happen is she's going to be put into rehab in South Africa. So what we thought of, the first thing that I want to do is we'd be able to hold an international star if we got it. So we'd be able to hold an American or a UK person based on who we got for this lead character. But we'd be able to set it in South Africa and it would make sense in South Africa. So in terms of my treatment, obviously one of the big things that you have to think about in terms of the movies that you're going to make is what are you making, who you're making it for, and how's it going to be used? Now, I want, as a producer, I want to make stuff here that you guys would watch that I can sell overseas. Now, that's tricky. You've got, generally, in terms of selling stuff overseas, there's got to be reasons why. Why is it of interest to an American audience? Why is it of interest if we're going to go to a UK audience? So our kind of take here was to take someone like a Lindsay Lohan, so we could approach maybe, well, she's a bit old now, but take like a superstar. Set it in South Africa, and we then might have an international product. Okay, so my thinking is, in terms of when I'm pitching this to Mnet, is to go, look, we can do this here. All we need is the big figure of the one international audience, the one international star, and we can sell it. Okay, so that's how I'm now approaching making this. And it's part of the pitch as well, and in terms of the budget. So there's a line item, which is a very large line item for international star. So, in terms of the story arc, she's been admitted to this hospital. She's now going to do the one thing in rehab that you never do, okay? Because this is going to be our kind of dramatic arc. And that is, she's going to fall in love with the owner of the rehab, Paul Black, okay? So relationships in rehab are a big no-no, and that's our dramatic story arc.